I had problems and you had problems. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was kind of weird because it's like I did nothing with my speakers since yesterday,
Yeah.
I'd have understood if I'd have taken them out or something, but I didn't. They were exactly the way they were installed yesterday, so I don't know. That shouldn't have, Anyway, pulled the plug, they worked.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so sorry about that, Chris. Sorry about that. Whoever else was complaining. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, I don't know what happened with the show, and yeah, I've got a number of people who have been posting to say what happened to the show this morning. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Welcome to Talking Niagara with myself, Peter Giblett, and Dave Wheeler, of course. Morning, Dave.
Morning.
We got Mike. We've already got Chris Simone looking kind of where are you, etc., etc. I don't know what happened there. That was really weird. Especially when you come on and I can't hear you. And I'd done nothing with my speakers, and that was weird. Okay.
Oh, well, somehow we got it resolved. Thanks, everyone, for their patience.
And yeah, Betty's saying good morning. And Mike Cushman again, good morning. I don't know how come again. And Chris Simone, hello. Yeah, good morning, guys. Yeah, I don't know.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
All right, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks, everybody. And Peter's saying worth the wait. Good morning. Yeah, absolutely, Peter. Thanks, you.
Peter.
All right. So, okay, so we got some more comments coming out.
You know what I like?
Good morning, White. Yes.
I like to just before we begin, I wanted to talk about something that was on city council meeting last night, and it kind of relates to something we were talking about yesterday. Well, it does directly, actually. Now, yesterday we were talking, or yesterday, the day before, we were talking about the strong mayors thing and the notwithstanding clause to take care of the homeless people.
Yeah.
There was a discussion there late in the meeting about this, and it appears that about half of the mayors in the Strong Mayor collective, or the big cities of Ontario, about half of them have asked for the notwithstanding clause, including St. Catharines, in order to override the rights of homeless people and somehow force them into incarceration of some sort and some kind of treatment plan. There is an ethical quandary here, of course, and Lori Lococo last night brought up that there are ways of doing this if we put enough money into our existing programs, that we need not strip the citizens of their rights. This was countered by Mayor Jim Diodati, who says, well, what will you do? I've done a lot of study on this too. And we have people who cannot think well enough on their own that they will not get treatment, and they will. And of course, he talked about a guy that was minus 5 degrees and he was standing outside City Hall with bare feet. And so the argument goes like, we got to do what's best for them, even if they don't like it. And others are saying, well, there are other ways if we put the proper amount of money there. Lori argued that those people who are already involved in this find that they don't have enough facilities. And she also pointed out that there was economic reasons, not just mental health and addiction, that have driven people to.
Part of the reason we don't have the money is because we don't have the budget provided to us. We don't have the money available from either the feds or from the province in order to make resolution of these problems possible.
Yeah, so the argument goes this way that on Lori's side, she said, we need not do the notwithstanding clause and remove the rights of people for their own good to go into to be incarcerated and be dealt that way. The mayor and others on the other side said we can't keep going on like this. Most of these people do not make sound decisions, and the problem is growing. The safety problem, the amount of mess these homeless folk tend to make, etc. So there was a real ethical quandary there. And while it was going on, I was reminded of the residential school thing, where a certain segment of the population says, "We know what's best for you, so we're going to take these children away from their the rightful the rightful parents and take them away and modernize them in a residential school." It was really well-meaning, but didn't really work out that well. And in these camps, but on the other hand, Lori was saying, if you do put enough money into this, if you do get the proper those people who are already working there and give them enough facilities, they can make a big difference in this, particularly those who are driven to the street because of economic means. And she says sometimes it takes persuasion of certain social workers to be able to to eventually bring them into the fold, basically, and help them rehabilitate. However, as we've said before, that people's patience tolerances are running out, and that was evident in the mayor, who had a different take than Lori and said, "Yeah, we're just going to have to do this. We're just going to have the problem is getting so big that we're going to have to just take them and incarcerate them, basically, for their own good, and for the short term, take away their chartered rights." It's quite an argument. It's two sides, basically, of the same coin. How do we fix the problem in that ethical quandary? Do we take their rights away for their own good? And like I said, when they were talking about that, I was reminded of the residential schools. Do we take the children away from their parents for their own good? And I'm not so sure if there are ways in which to do this without actually taking away their rights. I think probably the general trend is to I think that's what's going to happen. They're going to put a lot of effort into incarceration and other things where people are going to be forced into treatments or forced into areas where they can be directed towards treatments.
Well,
however, the biggest takeaway I got there was Lori saying, well, there are means by which we can deal with this, but it's never been properly funded.
Yeah.
So there are existing means by which we can treat them, but there's never been enough funding.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are existing means, and there have never been the adequate funding. And part of this is what I've been saying, is there needs to be a reallocation of funding from a federal level, in proportion to the amount of population that we've got that works its way through from federal to provincial to the municipalities. And in fact, most municipalities are massively underfunded, right? So Betty Zoom was making the point that we have so many abandoned buildings. Let's get the volunteers to run a homeless center. College students need credits, can help with the center. And she also says it seems programmers have got it wrong. They're mingling with They are mingling with the homeless, mingling the homeless with the junkies.
Well,
Right?
that's the problem. They all end up in the
Yeah.
same spot. Those
Yeah.
people who have economic, like there's a homeless guy I know. It's like his name is Maxwell. He's the most intelligent man I ever talked to. He knows everything. This guy. He
Yeah.
doesn't smoke. He doesn't drink. He doesn't. He's a very moral person. He doesn't believe in stealing or whatever, anything like that.
So yeah.
And yet he is an economic homeless by economic reality. I mean, he's
Yeah.
just a person that's a fringe person economically his whole life. So yeah, to be able to, and that was Lori's point. If we can get those who are forced in onto the street by economics, and Mike Cushman yesterday, I think it was Mike, he pointed out, or probably several times he's pointed out, there's not enough homes. People
Yeah.
are being pushed on the street because encroaching poverty. They don't have
Yeah.
enough to eat. They don't have enough money for rent. We don't have enough. Um, we don't have enough uh, facilities to help people on who are economically stressed. We could save those people who are in economic need. That could be the first ones we could deal with, and then we could start dealing with those people who are in encampments because of addiction and mental health.
Yeah, and Betty's saying one day she can see herself on the streets with the increase in everything. I can tell you, walk down the street where I come from, and where once I knew the community. Today, I can't walk those streets. Murders in the day, and it's for the drugs.
Yeah, drugs are an increasing factor here. What come first, the chicken or the egg? Mental illness or drug addiction, or the other way around?
And she's saying she doesn't do street drugs. Absolutely, I didn't expect you would. Yeah,
No. Well,
absolutely.
that's good to hear. I
I
don't.
don't think any of our listeners do, and the thing is, I think also that most of our listeners recognize the fact that, but for an extra few $100s, we could be on the streets ourselves.
That's right. That's right. And drugs have that kind of a thing. If you like back in the '60s, they said if you smoked banana peels, you could get high. Well, if that was really the case, you can imagine how
Oh,
many banana peels, how many bananas would be being sold all over the country. Like
yeah.
it, the banana supply at the local stores will be wiped out
The other
instantly.
Yeah, the other thing that bothers me is you say, okay, I do understand the notwithstanding clause, using the notwithstanding clause, sticking them in some form of program, government funded program. But remember this, putting street people into prison. William O'Sullivan told us this a couple of years ago. He was talking about prisoners and what people are, we pay the government to put people in prison. What the government pays society to hold a person in prison for 1 year. It's $120,000 to put one person in prison for 1 year. So that would be the same for each of these homeless people that you put them in prison. It's going to cost you that much per year to keep them.
Yeah, that's sad thing. Really, it is.
Yeah.
The cost of incarceration is incredible, and it's especially egregious in the states where they have incredible amounts of people incarcerated for a democratic society, which tells you the stratification of society. Most of the poverty, most crime is driven by poverty and lack of opportunity, whether by education or whatever that or a situation they find themselves in. That's the biggest thing we can help with. And right now we are going to supply not only the homeless encampments with homeless people if we don't find affordable places for them to live and quality food for them to eat at a reasonable price, we're going to force more people on the street. And when you do that, then what happens is you get an uptick in crime.
Yeah.
And that is
Okay.
that is one of the biggest drivers of the forced incarceration of homeless people, is because of the fear of the uptick in crime, uh, drug abuse, as Betty had talked about, gunplay. That all increases, but all kinds of other things like defecation in graveyards, people uh, breaking into abandoned homes, and that kind of thing, the kind of mess and the kind of thing that pushes people away from businesses, because you have homeless people uh, kind of scaring other people away. It is a definite and unique problem. A core of it is, of course, the amount of fentanyl that's coming into the country. But like I said before, the other factor there is poverty and the stress on people. Like,
Yeah.
there are a lot of homeless people, and we haven't seen that since the Great Depression. So I would look at the economic circumstances first to see if
And
it's
I'm not sure that carting them away and putting them in prison solves the problem.
well, it's going to cost a lot of money to do that. So if you
Yeah.
took that money and put it into the programs that already exist, you might have a better result without taking people's rights away. And
And
in order to incarcerate people, like you said, it was going to cost a lot of money. Is that if you spent that money now on the programs that really already exist, and Lori mentioned the fact that when people, homeless people or anyone else basically, but obviously a lot of homeless people will want to get drug rehabilitation. So they'll get on the phone and they'll phone somebody. Then they say, "Oh, sorry, we got like a 2-month wait before we can take anyone because there's not enough facilities."
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
what's good that going to do? That leads to desperation, which leads to more drug use, which leads to more homelessness.
Okay, and let me come to this statement by Jennifer Johnston. The dismantling of encampments and the throwing away of their belongings is inhumane. For the forcing into treatment, we all know what that means. We all know that means sending them to jail. We would essentially be treating a public health issue as a criminal one. They're not criminals, they are sick. We often forget addiction is a disease. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's the argument. Regrettably, though, that's the argument that those people who want to incarcerate them for their own good make. The people who are on drugs or mentally ill
Well,
uh, uh, have do not have the capacity to make rational decisions, good decisions for themselves.
yeah,
They say that these, because of the drugs and their mental health conditions, they no longer have the ability to make rational decisions. And you know yourself, if you are a person who knows somebody who is drug addicted or mentally ill, you may have to make the decisions for them. You may have families all around are trying to get their uh, have the police pick up somebody and put them into the
yeah,
mental health facilities, for the overcrowded mental health facilities, for 72 hours. That's about as long as they can do
yeah,
without to get the doctor's referral to keep them longer. That takes more time. And
well,
what happens is the people whose family have the police put them in. You got to go to a judge, and the judge then says, writes an order and gets 72 hours, and you can take a person that you are related to or know, and then put them in a mental health facility for 72 hours where they're assessed. But so you can do that. But after 72 hours, the rights of that person kick in again. They have to
yeah,
be diagnosed by a doctor that says they have to stay in. And the only reason why you can have them stay in there, if they are a direct threat to themselves or others.
yeah.
And
Okay,
if the doctor thinks that the person is going to be suicidal or is a violent person, then they can keep them. But for all other reasons, they have to let them out after 72 hours. So there is an imposition of someone's freedom there for 72 hours that's legal.
Yeah.
I suppose what they want to do is extend this.
Well, I'm not sure they're trying to do it through that mental health route. I think they're doing it a different, thinking about a different way. Okay, so Mike Cushman is saying, Jennifer, they're sick, but they must steal to support their addiction, which is where you end up with them back in prison. All right, so that's where that cycle about steal, go to prison, steal, go to prison, steal, go to prison, it comes into play, right?
And
And
what about drug dealers? I mean, when they get caught, they get kind of a slap on the wrist, don't they?
and they just seemingly get let out the same day, and back dealing again by tonight. Yeah, I know. Right, the ones on the juice, at least one need at least 1 year's detox, but the government doesn't do that, says Betty. And we pay for them to stay in. Yeah, that's for sure. Everybody is in prison. We're paying the salaries of prison guards, etc., and that's what costs us. That's what costs that money.
Yeah. So the argument on Lori's side, if you put that kind of resources that you want to use to detain people, if you put that's going to cost a whole lot of money. If you put those resources into existing systems, where somebody who phones up and wants to go to a detox center and is told there's a 2-month wait, if they say, okay, come over right away, how much difference would that make if they had the means and the wherewithal?
Yeah, that would make so much difference if they had the means to actually go into a detox center now. Waiting for 2 months. Waiting for 2 months is not helping anybody, right? And that impacts the homeless situation as well. So Peter's making point: no amount of drugs can fill the void of lost pride. Dealers count on psychological damaged customers as their income source. Absolutely, it's as much a psychology of sales for illegal produce like drugs as there is for legal produce.
And here again, Betty brings up what we often talk about: government pays for illegals. So if you come over on Roxham Road and or you get into the country as a refugee or something, the government has a huge amount of resources to deal with you. Why don't we have those huge amount of resources for the people who are living here already?
Yeah. So if those resources, exactly as I said, that if those resources were channeled from the feds through the province to the municipality, we can be building, we can be building small homes or something for those for those homeless. They're not going to be mansions. They're not going to be high class. They're always going to be poor provided. But one of the problems that we've gotten with the existing system that we have, the shelter system, is the shelter operates from like 8 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning. When it's 7 o'clock in the morning, you're out of here, just like brushing away the dirt. You're out of here. Get lost, right? We don't want you for the day. Well, why should we treat homeless people like that? If you're giving them a shelter, give them a shelter which includes, a somewhere to sit, somewhere to lay their heads, showering facilities and cooking facilities. If you've got that and they've got the right to stay all day, why, we don't want that would keep them off the streets as well.
Yeah, it's a very complicated problem.
And we can add to that educational programs, etc., can't we?
I suppose, but the first thing is to get change their mind about staying on the street, but how are you going to change your mind? Like, we do have enough shelters. Apparently, that came up last night. We have 400 and something shelter beds or whatever, or locations, or that where the homeless folk can go.
Okay.
But once you have that, it somehow says, well, okay, you can now get rid of the encampments because you have shelter.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's not day-long shelter; it's only for nighttime.
Yeah.
Now, I think a
Jennifer,
big problem. I think a big problem here is we kind of think we want to treat them all the same. What we should be doing is dividing the homeless folk up and keeping them away from one another, because what happens when you have a lot of people with a lot of problems, some mental health, some economic, some drug addicted, and combinations of them, what you do as you start getting a self-sustaining sort of
yeah,
psychology
and
that keeps itself going.
yeah,
If we can
exactly.
separate individuals and treat them one at a time and keep them away from the lifestyle they've had, but not do it in incarceration, put them in a nice place to live, you know, separate each one of separate most of the homeless folk that all sort of encamp together, keep them divided from one another, but not incarcerated. Just put them in a nice little hotel room or something, you know.
Yeah,
So,
well,
so
Jennifer is saying that housed people have been proven to be more receptive to change and exponentially more often able to integrate back into society as a functioning citizen. Absolutely. And Betty continues on, where I come from, to help each other, we do it for free. It's our community right. We I don't do everything. I don't know
no,
everything. So yeah. The work back home, she's saying, in treatment center, seen a lot, I've observed a lot. Yeah. And that's the thing. We're seeing, I think we're living in a different era, Betty. We live in an era which has become less caring. You're talking about an era where kind of, in a way, we kind of said, well, there are some societal problems here. And now we seem to be in an era which is kind of, well, well, you're homeless. Well, tough to be you, and I don't care. And there are too many people out there that have this I don't care attitude. And I actually wonder whether the question about applying the notwithstanding clause comes from a we need cleaner streets and I don't care, but we've got to get the homeless off our streets.
no, I
Anyway,
disagree. I disagree. Most of us do care, but I think the situation we're in now is because nothing has worked, and the frustration level is getting too great. It's like
mm,
uh, it's like lending a guy money steady so he can get himself a meal or something, and then find out that he's using it for drugs. After a while, you don't give that guy any money anymore, and
yeah,
then after a while, you become cold to his or her circumstances because nothing seems to work, nothing you've done. So you begin with compassion and you begin with understanding, but every time you try to help or lead a horse to water, basically, you can't. That is the frustration level, I think, that's bringing on the harsher look at homeless people, is because we tried. We have a lot of people out there trying. We've had understanding people that look upon homeless people and say, well, this shouldn't happen, and try to deal with it. But the comments are always the same. Everything we try, nothing works. We've got to
yeah.
do.
Oh, I know, and I'm well
I
aware of
think
that.
motivator in this right now. Uh,
Okay,
I
Betty is asking, do you remember when the natives asked for healing on an island, and I thought, no way. But maybe today there's one on the drugs. There's one on the drugs. It's needed. Sorry.
I think part of it, like if you're talking about incarceration and detention of the homeless, well, you can start by coming down harder on drug dealers. They themselves would probably may have been an addicted, and if you get them in jail and get them through treatments, the supply of drugs is is a big issue. I think that's destroyed much of our society because they are so easily attained, and the money from them is staggering. So I think that's part of it. Mental health kind of consultations is another thing, and that bit about the pride thing, that thing that's essential to a person's feeling of oneself. Once that gets bruised and hurt, then and and diminished, where do you go? You hang out with other people whose soul has been bruised, diminished,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
they have a commonality, I guess.
Well, let's put some of these comments that I've got now. Peter Biker is saying, I appreciate the commentary of Betty Zoom. Bless you and your caring heart. Nan Foster is saying, Jennifer, there are so many models we could follow that actually work. Denmark, for instance, I believe that if you want to force treatment to cigarette smokers, alcoholics should be forced first. Oh, wait, we get tax money for them. The housing problem has created the housing problem has been created, as has the healthcare problem. Not just the problems suck, the people solving them suck worse. Yeah, and that's part of our problem. Good morning, Nancy. Yeah. Caught on our city full caught it in our city, 490 mil, I think. Who's doing it? Yeah. And Betty's saying thank you. I think it's our duty to be looking at this homeless question. Absolutely agreed.
Yeah, and it's this is a subject we have talked about probably the most in all the history of this show.
Yes.
It keeps coming up, coming up.
Well, and it's
every election we have, it's been an issue. Whether you remember every election has had that. What are you going to do with the homeless people? How can we help the homeless folk? And that kind of thing. And yet nothing real. And every politician has ears to it, and has will want to do something. But this is the problem. They've all talked about this for years. They've all assured everybody that the homeless situation is top of mind. But it gets away from being top of mind when they keep trying things and it doesn't work. And then you have a person like Lori Lococo who says, well, have we really? We haven't really funded the program.
I don't think we have, because we still haven't looked at some form of housing first solution. And that can't come from municipalities. That's got to come from the province or from the feds.
Yeah, I suppose. But the idea is what they have now is where do you put them, and they put them all together, and all that will do.
I think putting them together is not a wise idea.
No, you have to divide them up.
Yeah, you're creating a kind of an area whereby the drug dealers know where to hang out.
Well, even when they would take homeless folk and put them in hotels on Lenny's Lane for a while there. I don't think they do that now anymore, but they would. But they're all the same people with mostly all the same problems.
And the drug dealers knew exactly where to go. The drug dealers would arrive at those hotels, offer their wares, and particularly they pay attention to the new homeless.
Yeah, and they would feed off themselves, kind of. There's misery in there's misery in company, basically. But anyway, the battle on goes. We'll see what kind of solutions they have. There are going to be people that warn that doing half measures by not taking and incarcerating or putting into detention homeless folk will not do them any good. And as I said before, as I was listening to the mayor last night, it reminded me of the kind of psychology of the residential schools. We know what's good for you. So we're going to take you from your circumstance and put them in circumstances that we think is good for you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that really worked, but on the other hand, the mayor did point out that there are families, lots of families, begging the government to take their relative that's in a homeless encampment, and take them and withhold them someplace where they can actually have no choice but to uh, address their addiction or mental health. So you can see the argument on both sides.
Oh, absolutely. I can see the argument on both sides, and which is one of the things why I think we do need to do something. It has reached a head where I think there's a lot of people who are agreed that we need to do something. What I want to ask the question is, what did Niagara Falls vote, or did they not vote?
You know what? The screen went dead around time vote. Yeah. So they were going to make a vote. I think basically they were going to make a vote whether or not to go ahead with the at least initially with the notwithstanding clause. Now there was an issue. The cities are all divided with the notwithstanding clause. Some want it, some don't. Some have variations of the bill. They want to do a lot of what is suggested without the notwithstanding clause, and that's what Lori pointed out. There's many of the cities.
I would tend to err on that side. I don't like the use of the notwithstanding clause, but I also understand why certain mayors are arguing that way.
Well, certainly, and their citizens are after them, saying, "Look, I mean, these people are ruining my business. They've broken into my backyard. They defecate in my backyard. They steal things from me. They act appallingly. That kind of thing." So what do you do? Is it the safety of the whole or safety of the? Well, I don't know. It is as I said before. If you can get a relative of yours or a person you know to go into treatment for 72 hours, you can get a judge to do that, and to force a person. That's an imposition of the rights right there. So we already do it on a small scale.
Yeah.
Do we do it on a larger scale?
Okay, so Peter Bike is saying they've created a subculture reliant upon the state, who ironically is addicted to it as its own vices. I mean,
yes, that's interesting.
And I've tried to put up all of the comments as people have made them, and so I apologize if I missed people's comments at the time they actually made them, so that they didn't actually fit in with the conversation. Yes, force, you need 2 signatures, I think. Yeah, in order to make that, you do.
Well, in this, so a family member or family members could take a family member who is in bad straits, addicted, mental health issues, will not seek treatment. Their family can force them into an appraisal into a mental health facility for at least 72 hours. Basically, what the notwithstanding clause is saying, we can do that as a society. We could take a whole section of our population that we care about and we're worried about, and we know that are not doing what they should be doing as humans, and put them in a place where they have treatment. So instead of a family doing it, it's like sort of the city doing it for a whole section of its own residents.
And Paula McLaren is making the point that whether it's 72 hours or 72 days, you can't stop a person from taking drugs. Not even 2 years in the pen would have stopped people. They get out, they find drugs. Period. Right. And Betty's saying this was strong, but needed. Thank you, guys.
My question here, though, is there a segment of the population that's lost and there's nothing we can do? Even if we cut that last comment by what was about the availability of drugs, putting him in 72 hours or 72 days or whatever, is there a segment of the population that is predestined to be lost to us, that eventually they'll go down that road and they'll either die of poverty or drug addiction or both? Are there people that cannot be reconstituted, cannot, and that's my biggest fear. That is there, these things are so intangible that how much of that segment of how many of those people, those homeless people, can we save? How many of them can we bring back into the fold of society?
Yeah, it's a bad situation, that's for sure. Sadly, there are. Paula says, sadly, there are many that will not be brought back into society. And Jennifer continues, if we're going to tackle the homeless issue, we need to address the poison drug supply. Nobody should be dying from poison drugs. A safe supply is needed, 100%. Right. And Betty saying, I'm sorry, I chat with you like we are having coffee in a room. And that's fine, Betty. Hey, I think that's actually what, we've gone completely 100%. We've been 41 minutes off script, and that's fine. I'm absolutely fine with this. And I think it's great that we are having this discussion. I'd have loved to have known what Niagara Falls voted. Sorry, I'd completely forgotten about that discussion last night, and I missed the council meeting. I should have logged on later on. I should have checked it later on.
Yeah, I missed you there for a while. For a while, I lost your reception there. But anyway, this is we've talked about this subject the most of any during the life of our show, and I don't think it's going to change much going forward.
And Peter says he wakes up early to catch this stream. Love it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you. And basically, we're producing this live, basically on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So happy to have you connect and share it with your friends while we're here, especially a discussion like this. And the thing is that there's all manner of alternate viewpoints about how we can resolve this problem. Just because I've said one way of doing it, or just because Dave said one way of doing it, doesn't mean we've got the only answers, or even any answer at all.
You know what they say. There's your way of doing it. There's my way of doing it. And there's the right way of doing it. So let's do it my way.
Make sure you let me know when the next one is in St. Catharines. Okay. We don't do much in the way of St. Catharines, but hey, Betty, love to meet anyway at some point. I work in St. Catharines during the day, so there you go. So, okay, city meeting she was talking about. Okay, I'm not so sure about the St. Catharines city meetings, but you can probably look them up on the web. That's a good question. I think most of the St. Catharines city meetings are actually there's an agenda for them. Yeah, there's an agenda for them. Okay, Marion. I don't know when they are Betty. Okay. If I find them, I'll put the agenda on. I'll put the agenda on the thing if I can find it. All right. Council agendas. Here we go. Right. Maybe we will find it. There we go. This is St. Catharines. There's your city agendas for St. Catharines. All right. There we go. Okay. So you can follow the link. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so one quick thing before we actually go. I think we kind of moved this entirely over to the homeless question, right? I think there's something we need to actually. I saw your last thing that you sent me this morning. Pat Porter, the new owner of Niagara Falls online station 4680Q. Congratulations, Pat. He began his career in broadcasting after studying advertising, promotion, and business at Bowling Green State University.
Well, that Bowling Green is it's a real university. It sounds
I
funny.
thought maybe that was a purchased degree.
No, as a matter of fact, it's an accredited as I understand it, it's a credit. Yeah, I've heard of Bowling Green University.
Yeah,
I think I have anyway. It sounds familiar.
Yeah, it does sound familiar. He also went to Fanshawe College, and then he became a DJ. So he's worked for he worked for London CKSL and a number of stations over the years. Worked at one point with 91.7 Giant FM in Welland, and moved his show over at one point to 4680Q, working with Rick on that show. And and now is actually taking on the station. Congratulations.
Yeah, which is this is where we got our start there. COVID killed it for us, and then we couldn't bring our show back because our show had to start at 7, and they couldn't help it. They couldn't let us start at 7 there. We'd have to be 8 or better, which would be no good for Peter because he works, and I would have to wake up later. But anyway, so we couldn't do that, unfortunately. But we do nod our cap to Rick, because without Rick, we wouldn't have had this show right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do. And basically, Pat Porter continue on. Funny thing is, I was actually talking about this with Christy Hales yesterday. Right, you know who Christy is, right? She's an indie rocks DJ. I used to work at 4680Q.
You're frozen again.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I was talking this with Christy yesterday, and she told me about this with Pat Porter taking over the station. I didn't know until she said yesterday.
Well, that's actually, I was, when I went in there yesterday, I saw Pat Porter with Rose.
Yeah.
In one of in the station when I was doing a show with Paul K. Lemire.
Yeah.
And Paul K. Lemire